listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is March 10th, 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I am joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this Monday? It's Monday record.
Oh, happy Monday morning to you, Spencer. Here we are. Yeah. I think we're both in like suboptimal shape this morning, but hey, we're here. The good news is that we're like, it's legit season 2 now. We're playing some WoW, so that's really fun, and we got a lot of stuff to talk about, including like a new patch. We already got another patch to talk about, because that's just how WoW works these days. So yeah, it's exciting, man. You know, like my excitement for this whole season rollout and patch has been a bit tempered, not just, you know, to be honest with you and with the audience. Like you probably noticed listening to the show lately, like WoW has sort of fallen a bit out of rotation for me, and I've been spending less time. I've been kind of raid logging and stuff and just kind of doing the bare minimum to keep stuff going. And a lot of it is, it's not really the game. It has nothing to do with the game content or anything about this expansion. I have a lot going on in my personal life, and I have other stuff I want to do. You know, I have a young family, and they're getting older, and then so stuff starts changing when your kids start getting older, you know? So a lot of that stuff is kind of combining to kind of tamp down that WoW excitement. But, you know, it does feel good to get back into it a bit now and get some time into the new content, kind of like ripping that Band-Aid off in a way, you know, just like shaking the routine back up. And it's like, okay, now I've seen the raid, I've seen the dungeon pool, you know, I don't have like a lot of tension around that at this point. It's time to just like hang out with the crew, kill some bad guys and have fun. So, you know, I think that like I had taken it to such a low point of engagement that to ramp it back up so fast is a little daunting, you know, frankly. And, you know, that was kind of a hump to get over this week, but I'm having a really good time so far.
I'm glad you're having a good time. I have seen very little World of Warcraft this past week. So for those who are unaware of the real life stuff going on, I was entering into the last week before a strike deadline for my collective bargaining unit for my IRL job, if you will. And that meant that on Thursday last week, we basically moved into a hotel, and by moved into a hotel, I mean moved into a conference room inside of a hotel, and we're there until Sunday morning at about 9:30. And I think I probably got about 4 hours of sleep over that period of time in small naps on a concrete floor. So just to be clear, it has been a week for me. So it meant that I didn't get a lot of WoW in outside of the first couple of days, because I just basically wasn't available to get on a computer and play World of Warcraft for that period of time. I was helping try and put together a new contract for 1,400 workers. So that was my priority this past week. And it meant that on Tuesday, I hopped in and did some Mythic Plus. So I was able to get into some Mythic Plus there. I think we did 8s was sort of the highest I was going at that point. And because we had to push keys, so it took a long time to push a bunch of keys, which is a pain in the butt to do, to be honest, when everyone goes back to a tier 2 key and then has to push all the way up. So that was unfortunate. I did, however, do the thing where I did the first chunk of keys on my Devastation Evoker, and I did say Devastation Evoker because that's the spec now that Evoker is playing, and did that so I could get a bunch of keys up towards 8, and then did an 8 on my Druid, so my Druid got an 8, so we just sort of filled the pool in that way with getting some keys, and that was kind of a trick that people were doing last week to be able to get some higher keys going. So that was my Tuesday, was exploring some of the new content and getting that done. And then Wednesday, we actually did a normal raid, sort of like an off schedule, just to sort of get in there, normal raid for people who had alts and that sort of thing. We brought a couple of mains, and there was a bit of gear funneling that happened, which was good. But it meant that I could actually raid before, you know, going into this craziness that I had ahead of me. So I was appreciative that came together and happened. We did have a 30-person normal raid. We like filled the thing, and it was good. We cleared the whole place. And so when that finished up, I did another Mythic Plus dungeon, and then I sort of signed off for the week. So my experience has been limited. I have a lot of profession stuff to catch up on for the week that I have not done at all because my focus has been elsewhere. I also have a lot of heroic fights that I want to do some more reading up on now that there's been a lot more kills out there. As tonight, I think is heroic raid. I don't know if I'm in or not for it because obviously I'm substantially less geared than the rest of my team who's been chain running Mythic Plus dungeons for the last 4 days. So like we have one of those guild spreadsheets that shows where people's eye levels are. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like 642 or something like that. And then like, you know, the highest person's 656. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a little far off from where that person is. So, you know, I don't know how that's going to work out, but I assume I have, if I don't get in tonight, then I have this week to try and catch up a bit. Hopefully I have some time to do that. There is some more union stuff I have to do this week, but now that we have a tentative arrangement, it means that has to get ratified and all that kind of stuff. So at least I'm not going to be locked in a hotel for that period of time for a while. I have some time for me. So that's what I'm looking forward to over the next few days is get some more Mythic Plus in, get some eye level on me. And then maybe next weekend will be the return to full-time raid, more regular, which will feel really good. So yeah, that's sort of been my week.
What terrible timing with season roll for you specifically.
I know. Yeah, specifically.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, we raid Tuesday night, of course, like as we have for many, many, many years, and the raid was fine. Like server performance was mostly okay. I think we had one incident sort of very late in the night where a bunch of people got dropped, and then took a minute to get back. There was some kind of small update that was pushed, and then it wasn't getting pushed very fast. So that kind of derailed us a bit, but we got all the way through normal Mugsy in our 2-hour raid window, maybe an extra like 10 minutes because of the disconnects. So that was nice. You know, we were mostly just walking through. Mugsy took a couple looks, but not many. I think Katamari Trash Boss, we had to do an additional time because people weren't understanding. You know, they got to run into the bombs, but so like that was yeah. So that was fine. And then we picked it up Wednesday. We got normal galley down in like 2 attempts. We just needed to look at it once, and I was so pleased that it wasn't a fight that requires like a super heavy burden on raid leaders or shot callers or whatever. It's like you need people to understand what to do, but you just kind of go do it. So that it was nice to get that wrapped up right away. Then we got through first 2 heroic. You know, the first boss, I guess you have to do, and then you have some flexibility. But we went and did Mecha Godzilla versus Cyber King Kong for second boss, and so that was good. We got those 2 done. Then we had time to look at Rick. And we didn't get it. I had like 30 people in or 28 people in, and some people were not really super ready for week 1 heroic progs, and it showed. So that was raid. I actually had to miss raid last night, which kind of stunk. I didn't really like having to miss a opening week raid, but you know, like I said, life happens and stuff's going on, and just the timing wasn't there. The team did get 2 more bosses without me on heroic last night, so that's awesome.
That is awesome.
So we're in good shape. I mean, that's pretty similar to what we did first week in Nerebar, I believe. Yeah. So that's really good. That's a good setup. It's going to get everybody some upgrades and some nice vaults. Keystones, man, that was a big thing this week for sure. We started off, having to start with 2s was not really optimal, but yeah, at least we knew it was coming. I guess it wasn't a surprise, but it's like, okay, we got to start doing some stuff. Luckily, my Mistweaver buddy had gotten some keys done prior to raid, so he had a 5. So at least we could start with 5s. That was a little bit better. It started off okay. I felt like stuff was okay initially. We're doing like 6s. You know, you get that, you know, good heroic loot end to run and all that. A couple dungeons like Floodgate felt just absurd. It just felt absurd. Yeah. But you know, so we did some dungeons Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Right. I did a lot of dungeons this week actually. And like it was feeling okay. And we're kind of in that 6-7 range. We're like, well, this is pretty good for week 1. Like 7s are a little much with Tyrannical, and we don't really know the bosses yet, and the tuning's kind of all over the place. But filling up that heroic vault, you know, getting some rating. And then Friday, like the big nerfs came down, which we'll get way more into. And then it was like Friday night, Saturday morning, like 9:30 a.m. I'm up. We're in dungeons, just pounding away. Like we got, like the whole crew got KSM done week 1, which I don't think has ever happened before. And we got some 10s done. Not timed yet, but like that's Myth Track Vault week 1 for at least a few of us. It's huge. I only got 2 done. I'm hoping that maybe tonight, people will be around and we could twist a couple more 9s and maybe I could round out a second myth choice, but just huge on that. I think dungeon, I mean, man, what a world of difference from season 1. I think dungeons are feeling great. I'm going to spare the discussion for this week about like what is going on with raid difficulty and rewards versus the rest of endgame PvE.
Fair. All right.
I'll just give you the short version, which is that I don't think it's in a good place, and that it just feels wrong compared to like dungeons, for example. But that's a larger conversation we'll be having a lot this season. I feel like I'm happy with the dungeon pool. I think it landed pretty well so far. I've been having fun in there, and I think some of the reworks to the old dungeons they did have been upgrades. So I'm feeling good. I'm looking forward to doing more. And then the other big thing this week, man, was vaults, delves for vault rewards specifically. Right now it's like I want to get as much, at least heroic stuff in my vault as possible because I want to get heroic 4-piece if I can. I want to just like skip champ stuff if I can avoid spending the limited currency on that stuff. So +8 or whatever we call them, delves give you heroic gear, both with a map if you have the Delvers map and in vault, and like they were pretty easy for me at 640-ish item level. I haven't really gotten too many upgrades yet, just a couple little things here and there, and I haven't been spending crests yet because I'm holding my breath to open the vault. So I was just like walking through 8s, dude, just filling up that tier. I got my map, I got my hero piece out of that. I went and did underpin already. Underpin 1 was really no problem for me. So I sort of got all the way through that system in terms of that initial, like the questing and all that. So that was really cool. Delves are in a much better place, I feel like, than they were in season 1. They're just more fun. Like I think the reworks, the way they're laid out, the events that happen in them feel better and look better than season 1. The tuning feels better. This is like way more what I was looking for out of delves specifically. Again, I think this skews the whole reward structure of the game a bit much. I mean, you could do a Mythic +2 and get hero track gear. You can do, these mid-range delves and get hero track gear once a week, yes. But, I mean, you could easily go to a raid and not get anything from the activity itself, and you're just filling up vault. So I think the overall landscape has shifted a lot compared to, especially how it used to be. But, man, I mean, like, I think they positioned Keystones and delves to be pretty fun and extremely rewarding activities. I think where we're at right now doesn't feel very punishing to get at least up to these hero track rewards. So that's where you want the game to be, right? Like you want people to feel like they're getting a reward for spending time in the game. They're powering their characters up to getting something tangible for the effort, and it's a much different feeling this week than we're within season 1, week 1 for sure. So I think they needed it. I think they needed to restore some trust from players that like, we're not trying to make you miserable. Like we want you to play the game and have fun with the people that you're playing with. And so, I think they're a lot more on that track. And it's also nice to see them making like big changes to dungeon tuning specifically, like right away. Not, Stone Vault's overtuned. Let's let it sit there for a few weeks and months, whatever it is, and see what happens before we like tone it down. They're not doing that right now. I mean, we had some pretty big changes to talk about that came in, late in the week. So I think that goes a long way to keeping people interested in playing the game and wanting to, run that next key or push that next level, get that vault reward, whatever. Because if it doesn't feel good to play, then at a certain point, it's like, I don't care what the reward is. I just don't want to do this.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I do worry a little bit about how easy rewards are to get. I say that mainly because of what I just described. I had a character that was 639 maxed out as far as eye level goes, really at the end of the last raid tier. And then within 5 days of me not being able to play the game, the rest of my teammates went up 13 item levels on me, which seems kind of weird and crazy to have that happen. But that's the situation we're in when you're handing out heroic loot the way you do. So it feels like, oh my goodness, this is a big catch up, but the catch up should be fast based off of how quickly they did it, right? So I'll see how all this goes. It is concerning when you see that kind of an item level jump that quickly in the first week of raid, when we're not even like I don't think our team cleared heroic yesterday. I'm pretty sure they're planning on going back in tonight to finish it. So I don't know. I'm a little nervous about how quickly they're handing out that loot, and we'll see what ends up happening with it. A couple other things here, top of show, that I wanted to be sure I mentioned because they were on my mind. I did max out skinning. That happened this past week, where I actually got enough knowledge that it is done. There is nothing left to do with it. I had 2 additional knowledge.
Wow, nice.
So that's the first one down, man. The easiest of the professions apparently is skinning to max out knowledge-wise. Everything else is still going. The other one that I wanted to mention was from my experience in the raid, and I don't know if you experienced this as well, boss graphics being more visually visible. I'm a little concerned that the team was told, hey, guess what? We made boss graphics easier to see so people can dodge them better, and this is going to be clear for players. And they went, great, so we can use more of them, right? Because some of these fights are, hey, would you like some circles with your lightning and your fire and your rockets on top of your circles?
Yeah. Well, for like Galley, it especially makes sense because the whole fight is him just like hucking a million bombs at you. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. I do think that like if everything reads, then you can have more stuff because it's as long as you call out where the safety is. But also, I think the theming of some of this content and the fights really lend itself to these sort of over the top, AoE explosions and stuff. But I don't know. I don't have a good handle on it yet because, like I said, I've only seen 3 heroic bosses so far, and I thought normal was actually great, like very straightforward. Like a lot of my team did not do any real prep for this, and we just, granted, we're high item level, we farmed out season 1 a lot, but still to be able to walk in and like there really wasn't much of a discussion about deep strats or whatever, just like don't stand and stuff, kill the boss. I think that's good.
I think the difficulty's in a good space as far as normal goes. I'm not worried about the difficulty of normal. I'm a little nervous about people's reaction to so many visuals happening at the same time. It feels, and this is what I'm going to say, it feels like all of the visual graphics were designed very individually and then just applied to what the design team had put together fight-wise. And no one thought about what does this graphic look like on top of this one when this overlap's happening and when you have to move at the same time. And there's just a couple of moments in fights where I noticed like this could get overwhelming and overstimulating very quickly. And for someone who may not be really looking for that in their downtime kind of fun experience, it's a little concerning. So it's on my radar. Yeah. That's all I'm saying. Is
I'll tell you what my reaction to it was like, it's a different visual language for the game in a lot of ways. Yeah. And so there is definitely going to be an adjustment period for all players who have played previously because the game just looks different now. And boss encounters look different. And even if stuff like reads better or is more consistent in terms of how it's presented, it's still different. And so there's an adjustment period of like, what does that look like? What does that mean? Oh, this is the soak one. This is the get out of this one. This is a spread out one, whatever. Like, that's going to take all players like some amount of time to adjust to for sure. And I definitely had those moments this week as well.
Yeah, I think it was Sprocketmonger to me that really got okay, there's a lot happening on my screen at the same time. And there's a lot of visuals overlapping visuals because there are overlaps in that fight that are like the entire floor is lightning. The conveyor belt is moving. There's rockets being fired across the room and there's circles you have to dodge. And you're like, okay, all of these things, if they all have enhanced visuals, cover up a lot of other things and a lot of other things happening. It can be overstimulating for some players. So they need to like be careful when you're playing with those dials about how many mechanics overlap with other mechanics. And I don't know. I'm curious as to how it plays out and what the eventual feedback will be from players. But if I start hearing from folks like, I feel like I'm going to have a seizure when I'm watching my screen, I'd be like, I understand your language and what you're talking about. Because there's people who would probably feel that way in a lot of these situations. So yeah, I'll be curious to see how this raid plays out. It is very casino, which is blinking lights and flashing things and overwhelming. That's what they want in casinos. So it does fit the theme in that sense. Okay, with that, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week in World of Warcraft is the Mists of Pandaria Time Walking event, which means that characters level 10 and up can do Gate of the Setting Sun, Temple of the Jade Serpent, Stormstone Brewery, Shadowpan Monastery, Mogushan Palace, and Scholomance to get yourself some additional gear for the week. I think this is going to be dropping normal raid loot is what it should be doing. When you actually complete 5 of these, you should get normal raid loot. And the Sign of the Mist buff is up, granting you reputation gains from combat and quests by 50% for Mists of Pandaria reputations. So the dungeons, I think, are dropping 606 high level gear, and I don't know if they uploaded the vendors. The vendors were like 541s or 43s or something, so now hopefully they're 593s, maybe?
Something like that, yeah. I mean, the Dungeon Journal says 606 for the drops, and then usually the vendors like 13 item levels below that, but you know, until it's actually live, we don't know for sure, but it should be in that range somewhere, so... This is when time walking is really juicy, right? When we're early season, it's only the second week. You know, time walking dungeons are pretty easy, and 606 will get you started. And even if you are well above 606, that normal raid cache can be kind of juicy. It can be all kinds of good stuff.
It can be a trinket.
Yeah,
a lot of things it could be.
There's good trinkets and weapons and stuff with unique effects in the raid, like they've been doing lately. So I will probably be looking at doing this on the main this week, just to, you know, cover some bases, get maybe a reward for not too much effort. Definitely a good one. I mean, these dungeons are pretty fast runs too. They're not like a whole lot of area to cover. No raid though. We still don't have time walking Throne of Thunder. Maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe someday. That'd be good. Siege Orgrimmar, time walking coming out. Who knows? All right. The next up, I guess I want to cover Undermine weeklies. We're going to have to pick up all of those down at the Incontinental Hotel. And then, of course, there's the side gig quests over at Slam Central Station. You want to be sure you're picking those up and doing those. There was a bit of tomfoolery that happened earlier in this week, I guess is the best way to put it, which is there was a Battle for Azeroth world quest up for one of the dungeons in BFA that is currently one inside the dungeon pool, Motherlode. And folks were going into Motherlode and completing that world quest by killing the last boss, which you could do on normal, which would get you a weapon, a guaranteed, I think it was normal or it was a normal or heroic weapon from the from the current item level of stuff happening. It took them about 3 hours to fix, but they got that fixed. That was some shenanigans. So I guess we'll have to pay attention to those sorts of things now going forward, where because they're throwing in dungeons from old expansions, we will be seeing potential world quests getting a little borked every now and then, and hopefully people didn't take too much of an advantage, and it you know, that is one of those things that's very exploitable and would be deemed an exploit if people were really taking advantage of it. So you got to be careful with that kind of stuff. Yeah,
really. I wonder if it also has anything to do with the fact that there's that slice of Zuldazar by Motherlode now that's like that has max level stuff in it. So maybe that, you know, maybe those two things converge to pop a quest that didn't belong there, or a quest reward that didn't belong at that level. But we did find out. I mean, now it is the second week that we had patch. Like the side gig quest will send you to different areas. You pick them up in Slam Central Station, but they send you to different places. So that was something we kind of speculated about last week. Had to confirm this week. Those weeklies were in Ringing Deeps this time. So, you know, maybe they just send us back and forth between those two locales. We'll find out as we keep going. But yeah, I mean, they give pretty nice rep, and it's not like they really take too much time or effort. So make sure you're doing those as you're working your way up the renown track.
Yeah. Okay, outside of that, our weekly for the week is probably Titan Disc Fragments. Obviously, with new stuff being added to the Call of the World Soul, we are unsure if the entire rotation is remaining the same or not, but it should be Titan Disc Fragments for folks picking that up inside of the main city. Obviously, there's a bunch of other weekly things you can pick up there as well, including the weekly dungeon, which you should be able to select the Undermine rep for completing out those 5 dungeons. So be sure, or clean out the 1 dungeon, so be sure picking that up. And of course, there's still the world events out there for folks that are trying to get some Valor Stones and that sort of stuff. You can get yourself the Special Assignments World Quest, the Theater Troop, the Awakening the Machine, Spreading the Light, Severed Threads Pact, as well as World Soul Memories to try and get those things done as well for the week, if that's something you're wanting to do. The Temple of Hot Magoo is our PvP brawl for the week. This is one of my favorite brawls. It is a substantially faster res timer, and you're able to throw the Orbs of Power between players It is very fun and very fast and very fast paced. So certainly something that you can certainly check out this week if you want to do some PvP brawls. The Gobfather, I assume, is just up every week now. This is the only world boss that appears inside the new Undermine Zone. We'll drop a 642 eye level piece of gear that is Warbound. So the first kill you get every week on the Gobfather will grant one of these pieces of gear. You are now gear locked on your account to Gobfather after that happened, which means that you will not get multiple pieces of loot per week off of this boss by bringing in different characters to kill this boss, but you are guaranteed that one piece of Warbound loot that you can use on your alternate characters. So that is the Gobfather, who drops plate, chest, and feet, mail, legs, and feet, leather, chest, and waist, cloth, legs, and feet, and a crit verse neck. I know that crit verse neck is particularly attractive to certain players and classes, so hopefully you get yourself that crit verse neck that you can mail around to whoever you want to wear it. That is certainly a helpful thing. And then Orda, the Broken Mountain in Ashkahet, is up and about at 603 item level gear for the regular world boss rotation.
I want to chime in on that just real quick because, for one thing, I think having Warbound gear on the world boss is great. I kind of like that much better than going, okay, like, should I do this boss on X number of whatever max level characters I have in the stable, or am I going to get around to this?
Yeah,
I think it's just I think it's a big upgrade in terms, like, doing a world boss isn't really fun in and of itself, right? It's part of this sort of, I don't know, tapestry, this menu of this buffet of stuff that you're doing, right? It adds texture to the outdoor game, but it's not like a thing you really want to invest time into doing. The other thing is they have not updated the old world bosses, but they have added a new thing into the weekly choose one. So if you didn't do your Call of the World Soul this week, there is a world boss entry in the choose one, and it's to defeat all available world bosses in the War Within, which means the Gobfather and whichever weekly one is up on rotation. So keep that in mind in terms of pinnacle caches and stuff like that.
Good to know. Yes, the affixes for the week for Mythic Plus should be Pulsar. This should be the first week we are having a look at Pulsar, which is that crystals will spawn. These large purple glowing orbs will spawn and move towards enemies. Sorry, they don't move towards enemies when combat. They lock onto your character and they will essentially spiral around your character. And these, you need to have different players or just any player sort of crash into them to remove them from other people. And you get yourself a stacking buff that increases your damage done and reduces your damage taken. If it obviously, increases your mastery and increases your leech. If it doesn't get absorbed, it increases enemy damage done and reduces enemy damage taken. Man, that would have been amazing as a buff for everyone else. They would have loved that. So no, yes, you want to absorb these so you don't have your enemies taking reduced damage. And if you are someone who is basically wanting to get a big mastery and leech buff, you just want to pop these really quick. The nice thing about this and what it's replacing, there's only 5 of them because there's only 5 people in a group. They are very large and easy to bump into. They do a small AoE explosion when you bump into them, but they give you a larger bonus. So 4% mastery, 2% leech for everyone you bump into, which means you get 20% mastery and 10% leech. Once you've popped all of these, they should be reasonably easy to pop. I'm trying to picture like some bosses where people might be standing really far away from each other. Obviously, it's the first week seeing them, so we'll have to see if there's particular dungeons that are a little bit more punitive with this. But in general, I think this will be substantially better than what we were dealing with last time, where the orbs were spawning, where people couldn't get to them, and there were more of them, which meant it required more people to try and soak and get in there to get them. So I think Pulsar is already an improvement just based off of the amount of orbs that are spawning that need to be soaked.
I can't help but agree. I mean, obviously, we'll see it in practice. We haven't played it before. I hated Oblivion so much, and it was such a standout in terms of how disruptive it was. Being targeted on player positions should help immensely. Like, you can move these things even, right? They don't like just stay where they spawn. They orbit around you. So yeah, I mean, you got to pay attention to it. It is going to be a new thing to learn how to handle, so that does add a new wrinkle while it's still kind of new. But overall, I think this is a big upgrade, and it is also nice that they've unified the bonus that the enemies get from Xal'atath if you don't do the mechanic right. You know, before it was like there was like haste buffs, or you know, there'd be the healing thing or whatever. So
yeah, they heal for 10% of their health. Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, like you don't want them doing that. So, you know, I think unifying the benefits that the enemies get if you don't do it right, that also helps kind of smooth all this out. So that's good. Looking forward to checking it out. You know, Ascendant, we had Ascendant last week as we predicted, but we weren't sure that the rotation was going to start over with Ascendant Tyrannical, and that was what we got, which is why we're pretty sure it's going to be Pulsar Fortified this week. And, Ascendant, we talked about it many times, and it's the same thing, really. Like, you handle it the exact same way in Season 2 as in Season 1. So it didn't really add too much of a wrinkle on top of we're learning a new dungeon pool. We're learning the vagaries of our new class changes or whatever, because it was familiar, but Ascendant is also pretty disruptive, right? Like, it puts 10 plates in the field, and you have to deal with it every time it spawns, and maybe somebody needs to use a GCD or more that they really didn't want to on popping something that's going to break them, So that was it was a bit disruptive, but it was an okay start to the season. This week, it's kind of a mixed bag because it's a new affix to learn, but also with Fortified coming in at 7, it should be easier to start working your way up those keystone ranks.
Yeah. Yeah, I am hoping that with Fortified at 7, this is going to be a lot easier for folks to get at least 7s and 8s done on a regular basis. Tyrannical, the first week learning new bosses, was great for folks at low-level keys who need to learn the boss mechanics, but was terrible for anyone trying to push keys where bosses just got pushed into an extremely difficult place, which the Spillway or whatever it was will highlight.
Operation Floodgate. Yeah, the bosses in there, especially early in the week, it was just like,
man.
My first time ever looking at that was 7 Tyrannical before the blanket nerfs, and it was just like, well, I guess we're going to die on the second boss for an hour and then finally figure out how to kill it, and then just leave because it's like midnight now.
Yeah, I had a very similar Floodgate experience. Floodgate was the last dungeon I did on Wednesday night, so we'd done the full raid, and we're like, yeah, we'll get one more keystone in. Oh, I don't have a Floodgate yet, let's do that. And went into Floodgate, and things went reasonably well until we hit the Swamp Thing boss, and then it was like, okay, we're on this now for the next 30 minutes. And then we got through that, and then there was still more trash and more bosses to do. It was like, okay. Yeah, it was a little weird to hit that barrier and that wall so early in that dungeon. It was so punishing, and just the healing alone was obscene that was needed to get through that boss. So I'm glad that there's changes that we'll talk about in a little bit here. Okay, Kalimdor Cup wrapped up today, so hopefully folks got in their racing they wanted to get in. I did not. I obviously hoped to try and get a lot more racing in than I did, so unfortunately I missed out, and I'll have to do the Eastern Kingdom one that I'm sure is coming up soon, and then hopefully in 3 months or 8 months or whatever it is, Kalimdor Cup comes back, and I'll finally get around to doing it then, and it won't be a schedule problem that's happening. So hopefully folks got in there and spent their currency and got themselves some of the rewards that are out there for that.
Yeah, this is a weird one because it doesn't end at reset, and it doesn't end like a couple hours after reset like some events do. It ends at midnight Pacific Tuesday morning, right? So as we're recording this, you have a couple hours left to do it. By the time you're listening to it on pod, it's already been over. But hey, you know what? The first time these things came around, we were like, these are really cool. I hope it becomes a regular thing. And I think it's been a little more than a year since the first time they rolled one of these out, but still, at least we have some idea that, okay, these are going to return. It's not going to be once ever. We're going to get the races in the old zone sometimes, which is cool. I think it's a fun thing to do. It adds some flavor to the game for sure. So, you get some MOG and stuff. You don't get anything super mission critical, but it is fun to have done it, and it's nice that it's in the rotation.
Yeah, I'm glad to see this back, and I'm looking forward to coming back again. And like I said, hopefully my life will be a little less crazy, and it won't be like during the launch of a patch and things like that, where I'm able to actually get in there and go through it and enjoy it. I honestly wish there was another week. I wish there was one more week of this, because I would absolutely bang it out if I had another week. So it's just unfortunate. Okay, hotfixes for the week. They fixed an issue with the where completing copious coffers and the Key of Madness achievement before Undermined patch failed to deliver rewards. Effective players should find them in their mail. So if you did that and you didn't get your stuff, you'll get it in your mail. And players now earn Weathered of the Undermine, Carved of the Undermine, and Runed of the Undermine immediately upon outgrowing the use of those crests. So there's another advantage there as well. So a couple hotfixes coming in there. They also went into classes. We saw some updates to Demon Hunter for Havoc spec, as well as Balance Druid for Feral and Balance, and then for Balance Druid, it's just Druid in general. And then Druid, they again took the comment that I mentioned last week, which was, hey, playing Feral Druid isn't really fun when you have to shapeshift into Boomkin form every 5 seconds so that you can maintain a buff to play that correctly. So they're changing, their decision was to nerf the talent that lets you do that. Like Hara's Meditation, players must remain in the shapeshift form for 2.9 seconds, which is modified by haste, in order to retain the buff that you get for doing that. So now when you shapeshift into Boomkin form as a Feral Druid, you want to cast a couple of spells before you switch back, as opposed to just shapeshifting, and using 2 globals to do that. So yeah, I love this ability because it encourages people to shapeshift. I just need it. I almost feel like they need to have a feral ability for balanced druids and a balance ability for feral druids for this to work, where like you have some sort of like slash that you can do as a balanced druid if you go feral for those 2.9 seconds, or like a channeled ability that takes 3 seconds or something that does a bunch of damage, that encourages you to shape into that form, use that ability, and shapeshift out and do a whole bunch of damage when you're doing it to sort of get the buff up. Like, I feel like there needs to be a larger motivation to do that than like, yay, I'm going to shapeshift out of cat form to cast Wrath twice before I shapeshift back into cat form again. That just doesn't sound super appealing. And I almost want there to be like special abilities when you take Lakara's Meditations that lets you like, or maybe a secondary talent or something that lets you use some special ability that is like a combination of the 2 forms that you're shapeshifting from. Because I would love to see that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Some kind of bridge between the specs where it's like, okay, when you off shift or whatever you want to call it, then you have this thing, but maybe it's like a 2-way thing where, both Balance and Feral both have it and they use it in each other's forms or whatever. Like, that would be, it'd be cool to be more, I think it would actually be like more intuitive, even though it's adding, a different ability. Because it's like, oh, this is my like I'm shapeshifted button, right?
Yeah, well, I they've already have abilities in the game, or talent in the game, that lets you automatically, when using certain abilities, shapeshift into the form that ability is required to be in to cast it. So I think it would be neat if they basically added a button to your bar when you chose this that was like, press this button, and if you're a Feral Druid, you will go into, your Owlkin form, and you will do this thing that takes 2 seconds for you to do. And if you press it a second time, it will put you back in cat form and do this cool cat form thing. And so you're just encouraged to hit this button as part of your rotation every now and then that pulls you into a different spec, gives you a buff, and some of that buff is retained when you switch back. I think that might be an intuitive way to do it.
It'd be really druidy too, you know? Like, I think it would fit the whole class motif really well, so.
Yeah.
Versus, shift into an off spec and then cast like that form or that spec's abilities for a bit and then watch your timer and then shift back. Like, it seems this is why people don't want to do this, really,
Yeah, it's clunky is the way I would say it is, and I feel like there's ways to make this really less clunky and really intuitive. Of like, yeah, you press this button as part of your rotation. It's like pressing a cooldown. You might press it every 30 seconds or whatever it is, and it puts you into a different form, does something cool, and then when you press it again, it puts you back into your original form, which also does something cool. Like, that to me would be neat to see on a regular basis and intuitive for someone's rotation. So I think that that would be a cool aspect. Even if it was like for Boomkins, when you pressed it, it leapt you to your target in cat form and didn't attack. When you pressed the second time, it wild charged you back away from your target and did a special attack. I think would be kind of a cool thing to see, because you'd have these leaps happening and you'd have to like actually be careful where you're using it every now and then, because there might be a room where you can leap off the edge or you can, mess something up. So like, I think that adds some flavor that I think would be nicer to see with an ability like that. All right. I've talked about druids a bunch. Paladins. Your holy, protection, and ret got themselves some bug fixes, so hopefully those specs are working more appropriately for you. And then with warlocks, an issue where Summon Felguard and Grimoire Felguard were taking higher damage than intended from area of effect spells has apparently also been resolved. So I'm glad that your pets are not just dying to AoE, because that's really sad and unfortunate for your spec, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like really any significant amount of damage that they're taking from those spells would be more than intended, right? Like, not like you can really control what they're doing in terms of what they're standing in.
Yeah. Okay, dungeons. This is where the majority of hotfixes happened this week. They didn't do a lot of class stuff, which I was surprised at. I thought we'd see a lot more class stuff. Maybe we'll see it later today for tomorrow's tomorrow's patch, or I guess not patch, downtime, tomorrow's maintenance. That's the word I was looking for. There's also the chance that we see some posted with tomorrow's maintenance. We'll just have to find out and see, but we got dungeon fixes. So Mythic Keystones no longer unintentionally drop a Siege of Borealis, Necrotic Wake, or Mists of Tyrannus key. I had this happen to someone in my guild. They got really? A keystone they couldn't run, and they're like, "What am I supposed to do?" Like, that's
unfortunate. Well, I guess can you destroy it, then go get one from the keystone lady in Donegal? But man, I mean, Mists of Tyrannus has already been in the pool so many times. It's a dungeon that Keystone runners who played back since Shadowlands have done so many times. Imagine like, oh, season 2, we're moving on. Nobody wants to do Mists anymore, and then you just get a Mist key anyway that you can't even do. You have to appreciate the humor in this situation, I guess.
Yeah. They were able to run keys with other people, so it worked out for them. Player deaths no longer affect Mythic Plus timer on Keystones level 1 and 2. Here's a nice change. Folks trying to learn Keystones, it's no longer a big punishment if you die in those Keystones. So just keep that in mind. So I'm glad that it's no longer 5 seconds is what it normally is per death, and it's just 0 now for level 2s and 3s. So good change.
It's a good change, yeah. I like it. I mean, I think, we'll see what the impact of having hero track gear in 2s and 3s ends up being on the overall landscape of the game this season, but I do think having an on-ramp to 2s and 3s is a good thing. I think people should be able to explore the system, learn the dungeons, at least have the timer element in play, have the enemy forces element in play, so that you have to do enough of the dungeon to really understand how it works and what you're supposed to do within the Mythic Plus system, get a valuable reward on the way out. I think the death timer penalty in general is kind of questionable. Just overall, I know we have the 15-second penalty up at 12 and above now, and it's more of like, okay, can you perfect this and really actually master this dungeon? It's especially in these, we have some like run backs and some real awkward situations if you wipe in certain places in this dungeon pool. Yeah. I think this is good, and maybe kind of thinking here is like, let's make 2 and 3 accessible and rewarding, and people that want, hero level vault rewards from Keystones hang out in 2s and 3s because they're accessible and they're not super punishing, and they're not trying to push into 6s and 7s because they have the item level where they're running into people who are trying to push higher and everybody's frustrating each other because they're playing at cross purposes. Like, maybe you just make 2s and 3s the place for people to hang out and chill and get their hero track gear and vault, and then people can get as sweaty as they want to get, right? Like that might be the thinking here.
Yeah, I think the thinking is 2s and 3s are for people learning keys. It makes more sense to be forgiving about them dying or something happening to them in those sorts of situations. Okay. Overall, they went in and they just reduced the enemy health and damage in Mythic Plus and Mythic Zero dungeons by 10% across the board. All of them. They just shaved 10% off.
Incredible.
Yeah.
What a change. Holy crap, man. This is, I'm not sure how necessary this really was considering it was week 1, but I'm not complaining. I love it.
Yeah.
To me, what this says is they had a target in mind for what they wanted to see player behavior in Keystones, and they already weren't hitting it. And they were like, we got to do something big. Blanket 10% health and damage nerf is about as big as you could really do for week 1, I think.
Yep. It's massive. It's a huge change. I really wish it had happened ahead of launch of it so I could have enjoyed Keystones more on Tuesday and Wednesday when I was doing Keystones. I am envious of those who got to run Keystones after this. So I'm hoping, I don't know, I might be able to fit a couple in today, maybe. So we'll have to see how that goes. If I can, that'd be great. Cinderbrew Meadery, they got themselves some changes in here. Rowdy patrons, rowdy yell damage reduced by 33%. Ipa's Sprouting Stout also reduced by 33%. Ipa's Brew Drop health reduced by 18%, and its movement speed was reduced by 14%. So overall, this place substantially easier. Dark Flame Clef, they address an issue where old Wax Beard's Reckless Charge can be cancelled when the target is out of line of sight. So you can no longer LOS that. Keep that in mind. Waxbeard's Rider melee damage reduced by 42%, as well as the Wandering Candle's Surging Flame is now removed upon Wandering Candle's death. So you're no longer dealing with that as well. Okay, Motherload. This is one that I know some people were having some fun in. They address an issue where the exit can take players to the wrong location based on their faction. That's fun. You just get beat up by guards immediately. Thanks, game. Yeah, so I'm glad that one got fixed. Crawler Mine's health reduced by 30% and speed reduced by 29%. Off-duty laborers throw wrench damage reduced by 66%. Azerite Extractor's rapid extraction missiles, as well as the group-wide AoE damage reduced by 25%. And Mogul Razdunk's Gatling gun damage reduced by 50%. So if you make a mistake and you walk through the Gatling gun because you went left as opposed to right when it started rotating, then you're not dead instantly by that.
That thing moves pretty fast.
It moves fast. Yeah.
I feel like it moves faster than it used to, but it's been a while, so it could be just some mental bias on my part.
Could be.
But they did put a very clear ground effect on the Gatling gun, so that helps a bit. Even if it is faster, it's like, okay, you can see where it is and where it's going to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it moves so fast that I think it's fair to be like, okay, well, if you get clipped by it, like, you can live if you are on your way to safety. I think it's fair for a mechanic like that.
Yeah. All right, they reduce the speed inside Operation Floodgate of Awaken the Swamp by 25%, and the movement force applied reduced by 17%. So yeah, that's a nice change.
Those are like the water AoEs that go out like every so often, and they shoot like these water blob missiles in multiple different directions, and they damage and push against you. This nerf was definitely palpable when I ran it back after that first ill-fated attempt.
Yeah, because when you're tethered to someone and you're trying to dodge and they dodge the wrong way and you pull yourselves together and then you both get hit by a wave because a wave was passing between you, not fun. So this a little bit more time to move, which is nice. The kinetic gel now has a 12-second permanent duration. They increase the cooldown of surprise inspection of Dark Fuse inspectors by 2 seconds. They reduce the distance of bubble burp targeting to 60 yards from 100. And they reduce the physical damage portion of Sludge Claws by 13%, as well as Thunder Punch by 15%. And they increase the cast time of Mudslide by 0.5 seconds. So some extra stuff there, as well as they reduce the Turbo Bolt damage by 30%. So hopefully some folks can eat a Turbo Bolt without having a big problem there. In Workshop, Mechagon Workshop, they address an issue preventing this dungeon from giving Great Vault credit. Well, that I'm glad they fixed that. That's a big problem. The anti-personnel squirrel's health was reduced by 93% and can now be attacked. The Machinist Garden Hidden Flame now has a precast visual. So
this is huge.
Yeah.
I gotta say, so Workshop is not something I was really stoked on coming back because, dude, I've done Workshop a lot, right?
Yep.
When it came out, like, it was in for almost all of BFA, right? It wasn't in the first patch, but it came in early in BFA, and then that was the days when we had that dungeon pool all expansion. Then it came back in Shadowlands because they did like the mega dungeon season, which was a cool season, but still, I've done a lot of Workshop in my day, so I wasn't really stoked on it coming back. But overall, I think it's pretty good. First boss got a massive rework, and so we're kind of relearning that a bit. I'm starting to get the hang of that one. I think the rest of the bosses have just been straight up improved, and Machinist Garden is actually a lot better, I feel like. Seems like they increase the interval between the ads spawning and the outside of the room, so you have more time to kind of plant and just like shoot the boss. Imagine that. And the precast visual on the Hidden Flame Cannon is very noticeable. There's lines on the floor that are going to become bad in a few seconds, which really helps people's positioning. I mean, for me, just being used to tanking it, it's like, okay, I would go park the boss over to the ad and hold it there as long as I could until the cast net started. Then I would move into the middle of the room and try to line up with where it looked like the flame cannons were rotating so that I could set the boss up safely. But then, like, the whole team has to be able to react to that too. So that's hard to do, especially if, like, you're melee, you don't want to be caught on the wrong side of that line, then you're losing all that uptime. So having the line on the floor before it actually starts shooting is massive in terms of lining this up and timing everything out. So hugely appreciated there. I didn't know what happened. We were in there, and I hadn't looked at the notes, and I was like, oh, there's a line for that now before it starts casting. Great.
I definitely found it easier than when we previously did it back in BFA. Like, I definitely found that there was this I don't know. It was just a dramatic. I expected it to be way worse than it was, and I found that the bosses in general were easy to complete. I will say the frickin' leaping fire dog, I still hate having to hide behind a crate and that there isn't a small space you can get into consistently that lets you do damage, even though people say there is. And it's like you have to see whether or not you have a buff or don't have a buff, for whether or not you're hidden, and try and get just the angle right, and the tank has to put it in just the right spot. It's just a mechanic that I dislike. It's just personal taste, but it is what it is.
It's a fair amount of forced downtime, but I think in general it's just better to play it safe. You know, I just try to direct everybody like, okay, we're going to drop the crate on this side of the line, and then we're going to line up on the corner. Next one's going to go to the other side of the line, repeat until it's dead. But man, I play with a lot of melee players. Like I've done multiple keys that are like all melee, even the healer. So it's like I got to like back up right against the box, otherwise we lose a ton of uptime on that mechanic.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Priory of the Sacred Flame, one I didn't actually run this past week yet, so we'll have to see if that happens or not. They did reduce the health as well as some damage on Captain Delcry, and they also made it so that the Savage Mauling now ignores targets that have been hit by it within the last 35 seconds if there are other targets available. So this means this will go on somebody else and not just leap to the healer over and over until they're dead. So that's nice. They did reduce the health on High Priest Anima, as well as Captain Suleiman and Master Damien, and they also reduced the damage on Heatwave. They reduced the health on Elena Emberlons, as well as Tanner Dualmal. So they did go through and just like shave, like as much as they did a 10% across the board health nerf, they also did a 10% across the board nerf to health inside Priory of the Sacred Flame, basically. So that's another telling thing about what this keystone was like for people. It's just a little bit too long and a little bit too much health.
One thing about Priory is like, I mean, you might have noticed, Spencer, reading a lot of very specific names of enemies. Like, it's a mini boss dungeon. There's mini bosses all over the place. So, yeah, it needed probably a little bit more targeted nerfing, because that kind of stuff is going to be more sensitive to like Fortified, for example, and less sensitive to a blanket nerf, you know. So they needed some targeted nerfs on this. I think I have only run this post nerf, and it feels mostly pretty good. It's overall, I mean, I feel like the dungeons are just easier than they were in season 1. I haven't encountered what feels like a stone vault. Like Floodgate is about as close as I think we are with that right now, and that is the newest dungeon, in my opinion and my experience. The newest dungeons always come in the hottest, and the returning dungeons are usually the easier ones. So yeah, I can't really speak to pre-nerf Priory, but I think it's in a pretty good state. Like I did it a couple times this week post nerf, and felt pretty good to me. It also has a trinket that has a really nice primary stat buff that also buffs other users of it. So this is going to be a dungeon you want to learn and do, because everybody's going to want to do this dungeon a lot. Because I think that trinket, if it's not BIS, it's still like it's like upper tier for basically every spec, because everybody wants primary. That's why they call it primary. And the more people have the trinket, the more primary you get. So, you know, just be ready to do some Priory this season. I think that's another important reason to keep it balanced and feeling good to do.
Yeah, that's fair. Liberation of Undermine, One-Armed Bandit. They made it so that they corrected an issue where fiery dynamite booty could not explode on death. It was knocked back when it died. So in other words, if you are clicking too quickly, this would not explode. They corrected an issue where traveling flames could fail it to move if placed next to a wall. Well, that sounds like, you know, just smart use of game mechanics to me. Added a short cooldown on being hit by traveling flames to prevent players from being struck multiple times in quick succession. That's great. I love that, because that was really unfun inside Arakara, where you get charged by the second boss and get bounced off a wall and then just get hit a second time and die. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you need time to react to stuff. Like, it's fine to put players in danger and attack them with stuff, but just the nature of kind of WoW encounters and mechanics sometimes means that, you know, stuff can fire before players can really react to it. So you got to dial that stuff in. You have to play fair. You have to give players a chance to go, okay, I just got hit with that. I need to move this way or whatever. And yeah, I think I did this before these changes came in on normal, but I don't really remember it causing us any kind of an issue. Yeah.
Okay, Mugsy's head of security. They fixed an issue that delayed Mugsy from entering intermission while casting other abilities. Galagio goons now lock their facing direction while casting Pay Respects, and updated the spawning visuals of unstable crawler mines to be more readable alongside the visual effects of Cluster Bomb. Sort of goes to what I was talking about earlier, where some abilities were overwhelming other abilities, and it's hard to actually tell what is happening. So yes, I'm glad they went in and changed that. All right, items and rewards. Man, Oil of Belladar's Grace, healing reduced by 40%. I'm pretty sure they just buffed this, and now they're nerfing it. So
right. They're like, we went a little too far.
I guess so. The plans for Charge Claymore and Enchant Boots Scouts March can now be obtained again from Auralia Seal Strike. They fixed some other issues in here, but let's highlight the fact that the Pouch of Weathered Undermine Crests, Satchel of Carved Undermine Crests, and Pack of Ruined Undermine Crests are now rare quality as opposed to epic, so it's less confusing for players. And the Triumphant Satchel of Carved Crest, Celebratory Pack of Ruined Undermine Crests, and Glorious Cluster of Gilded Undermine Crests now cost 45 Rune Crests as opposed to 90. So large reduction on that as well.
It sounds like that just went out wrong, right? Because that cost reduction on the buy up crest, that came in like late season 1, and they said this is the plan, this is how much it's going to be in season 2. I didn't happen to notice this. They must have fixed it before I actually looked at the vendor, because I only ever saw the buy ups at 45, but I guess they went out at 90, which was the original cost in season 1, which was kind of part of the problem of why season 1 was really not feeling great to people, especially in the first few months. 45 feels a lot more fair, I think. It's actually pretty nice. We are now, again, dealing with crest caps. The caps are back in place, but we have all the upgraded crest income, and also the logic around, well, if you've already earned cap of this crest, then you get the next lowest rank down up to cap, and so on and so forth. So you can get, if you're doing a bunch of stuff in in-game, raid and dungeon and delves and whatever else, you can cap out on all that stuff, and then start the week and start upgrading all your crests. Now you're closer to all your weekly caps or whatever. You can buy upgrades quickly from vault gear, whatever. So the system works out, pretty nice. It doesn't, it like mitigates some of the annoyance of having a cap, because you can kind of go a little above it just because you get that extra burst of crests at reset. You don't have to do any content yet. So, I think it'll be better this season to stay on top of your caps and get your slots upgraded to as high as you want to take them, because the thing in season 1, it was a great upgrade to the overall crest economy and to the buy-ups. It just came in so late that people had either long ago checked out of caring or were already done with the system.
Yeah. Okay. Mounts. The pearlescent butterfly mounts apparently were glowing too brightly. I'm curious what this looks like. Like I didn't experience this. I have the pearlescent butterfly. I did buy it for one of my characters because I did in fact like the look of it and the theme that I was putting together for a transmog. I didn't experience the flashbang. I want to know what this was like. Like, how bright was this really glistening for folks?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see it in the wild. Like, I saw it on the vendor, but I didn't buy it, and I didn't see anybody riding it. The whole point is that it's supposed to be glowing, but there is like an upper bound where it's like, this is too glowy. This is going to hurt the eyes of the person riding it. So yeah, I don't know what it looked like. If anybody has any screenshots of pre-fix pearlescent butterfly, send them to the Discord.
Yeah, I'm genuinely curious how much of a flashbang this thing was for folks on their screen, because I have to imagine it was people using the mount. They'd like come around a corner and the shadows would shift or something in the area, or they'd pass into a new zone, and suddenly like it just catches the butterfly wrong and you're just like blinded on your mount. I don't know. I'm genuinely curious how this all sort of played out, so we'll have to wait and see. Okay, as far as quests go, there were some hotfixes that came in here for some quests that were a little borked, so be sure if you were struggling with something last week, it might have gotten fixed this week, including the Kalimdor Circuit can now be turned into Lord Andastraz, so hopefully folks got that turned in, since that's going away. In Renown and Reputation, they resolved an issue where players couldn't get a restored coffer key upon reaching rank 9 of Renown with the Cartels of Undermine, as well as the Sparks of Undermine now correctly grants Reputation. That was a problem, not doing that for sure. Okay, Undermine itself, we saw that they increased the drop rate of the mount and cosmetic items from the Galagio Garbage Rare. So folks who are trying to get those items should have an easier time with it, as well as the Galagio garbage now has a higher chance to spawn for folks who are wanting to clean that up. And the scrap plated pants now have agility and intellect on them. They're not just strength. So, now you can use those too if you're looking to use them. So that's another factor in there. And then the micro pollutants and agitated contaminants will now respawn more quickly during the bonus objective of Dark Fuse participant, as well as the slime wrangling should now more accurately reflect the location of runaway sewage. So you get to killing for Nanny Tallulah. So just keep that in mind as well. Okay. World Soul Memory Rewards. This is a dev post that comes in from Chimes. And this is specifically about the rewards, obviously, with World Soul Memories. With the launch of Season 2, many players are returning to the World Soul Memories to help Azeroth deal with those long-ago events and earn rewards in the process. We'd like to talk about about how those rewards are given out, because there's some confusion about how things are rewarded. At high level, as you defeat enemies within the World Soul Memory, you increase your World Soul Memory score found at the top of your screen during a World Soul Memory. When the event ends, your World Soul Memory score directly translates to the level of rewards with no variability. That is, scoring 100 points in a World Soul Memory always gives the same level of reward. However, not every point is the same. The first points you earn in a World Soul Memory are significantly more important to your score than the later points. Increasing your score from 10 to 20 increases your rewards much more than increasing your score from 200 to 210. There are several breakpoints, but the most significant are 100 and 400 points. While World Soul Memory scores can go very high, rewards stop increasing only at 5,000. Once you hit 100, you've already earned more than half the total possible rewards. And at 400 points, you've earned just over 3/4 of the total possible rewards. And of course, if you use the Many Radiant Echoes option to join the event, your rewards multiplier, your rewards is multiplied by 5. The breakpoints are all the same. If you did 5 World Soul Memories with Radiant Echoes earned and had exactly 100 points in each of them, you would earn exactly the same reward as doing a single World Soul Memory event using Many Radiant Echoes. It's worth discussing why things are set up this way. Why are the early points worth more than the later points? The simple reason is we want players to feel it's okay to play how they want to play while still rewarding group play. Players who join a World Soul Memory solo or in small groups will naturally earn fewer points than those who join in full synchronized raid group. However, because those breakpoints exist and the earlier points are worth more, the players in small group aren't missing out on as many rewards as they would if they rewarded scaled to the score completely linearly. It's a fun word. We hope this helps you understand how World Soul Memories work, and good luck collecting those Valor Stones and Coffer Key Shards. So I will say I have definitely banked a lot of World Soul Memories tokens because I just like doing them in raids, because I found that the reward was so much higher doing them in raids than doing them solo. But that said, I hadn't done any solo when I was in like my end game gearing point. So I have to imagine, unless they scaled up the difficulty of World Soul Memories, which I don't think they did, I think it would be a foolish thing to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Going to get
not.
even.
They shouldn't have.
They're going to get even easier as our item level gets higher. It'll be easier to achieve higher points. And knowing that you're already earning half of the potential rewards when you hit 100 points, I feel like I'm going to burn through a bunch of these now when I need Valor Stones and things. Like,
yeah. I think laying it out like this, yeah, right, because I haven't done these in forever. I did them early on in Season 1 because delves were very important or attractive still to my main, right? I wanted to make sure that I was doing bountifuls and that I was getting the vault row for hero gear from delves. And I also felt like, well, doing this bountiful delve is a huge waste of time if I don't have a coffer key at the end of it, which maybe it kind of was back early in Season 1. Now I'm coming in with like higher gear than I would get out of that anyway. So it's sort of changed the perspective on it for me. But I think the idea of knowing like, okay, really like 400 is a good score to shoot for. And if you get anywhere near there, you really got a whole bunch of rewards. Trying to organize raids for this stinks. Like you can do it, but there's no like eyeball to click, right? That automatically spins up a listing and is trying to fill people. You have to list it in the custom group finder and hope that other people know to look for it and hope that they know what to do. Cause like sometimes people just join the group and then they go start it by themselves. And then, that's it. Like you don't go join theirs. They're just doing it.
Yeah.
I had really weird experiences trying to do raids for it. I think it would have been nice to have this information like earlier in the expansion, but I think now it's at the point where, okay, if I feel like I need more coffer key shards because I want more bountiful things, then okay, you know what? Maybe I would do one of these solo, load up Colossus and just hit demolish on the big dudes and get as many points as I can. And if I get anywhere near 400, I'm feeling pretty good. Like I could see myself doing that more so than like I stopped in season 1 because first of all, how much I felt like I needed coffer key shards really fell off.
Yeah.
And also like the stress, stress is maybe putting it a little too strongly, but
pressure,
like the inconvenience, the feeling of like having to organize like a raid group to do it or find one and like collect everybody and explain to them what we're doing and like wait for everybody to be patient so we could get like 15 people in. It wasn't worth it, especially because I didn't really need the shards and you know, but I think it's like if you have a character who you're gearing through delves, then you want as many key shards as you can get. You want to do as many bountifuls as you can do, which means you need a lot of keys. You're going to get the radiant echoes anyway as you're doing this stuff. So it has that synergy there. It's part of that loop. I think the good thing about it is if you're doing stuff above that kind of delves layer, then you don't really need to worry about this element of it as much. But you might have some feelings like I did at one point about doing a bountiful delve or a tier 8 delve and not having a coffer that you can open at the end of it. If that bothers you, then you're going to need some keys.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So I think overall, this explanation is just wonderful. It's great. I wish I had this earlier. It definitely removes some of the pressure of running these and feeling like I'm wasting something or being incredibly inefficient by not being in a group when I do it. And knowing I get more than half the rewards just for 100 points makes me feel better, because I think the early ones we got like 150 or 200 or something like that. That's like the cap out that I was getting to. That felt really bad because when I did a 500 plus point one with a raid group, I'd get this huge reward that was more than twice what I was getting, and it was crazy. And I was like, man, I must be missing out on so much stuff. And I never really did the math to figure that out. But clearly, obviously, if I had done the math, I could have figured that out. But yeah, that was, to me, it was just like I just wrote off the activity pretty quickly. So I'm glad they clarified. Thank you. Okay. Go inside the 11.1.5 content update. That's right. 11.1.5 content update is making its way to PTR and brings with it some new changes and additions that will roll out in the weeks after the release of the content update. You defend the Arathi in the Nightfall scenario. So basically players can take up arms beside a new faction in Flames Radiance to defend the Arathi against the Sureki forces following the defeat of Queen Ansarek. This faction consists of volunteer militia led by veterans Thayed Pyremaker and Milton Wildbrawn. And you rise through the ranks. You will earn up to 10 levels of renown to unlock new rewards. So yeah, that's a new thing coming in. A scenario for folks to sort of hop into and get some more story, as well as, I'm assuming, probably like a heroic reward once a week or something like that, I bet.
It basically sounds like there's like multiple different like outdoor components to this, kind of like some other public events we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
But kind of cool, like sort of picking up on, the storyline with the Sureki and what's going on now in Aj-Kahet in the wake of Queen Ansarek being defeated and what's going on in Hellafall. So it sounds like you'll assist them doing like outdoor kind of stuff in a couple different locales. And a lot of new mod coming in, recolors of stuff that are more, it looks like, Diablo 3 Crusader, that like sort of white and black motif. It looks kind of like that, but with sort of the Hallowfall Arathi looking sort of, silhouettes and stuff. So kind of a cool twist on that. And there's some new outdoor stuff to do, it sounds like, mostly.
Yeah. The Dastardly Duos, later in the patch cycle, players will be able to experience a new 6-week event, providing a variety of cosmetic toys and cosmetics and dungeon items based on the bosses you encounter. So Vinny Sweet's showrunner, the announcer, is promoting Dastardly Duos, where players can set up to take on animatronic versions of past bosses, gain power-ups, and strive higher and higher scores for bragging rights. You and your party will fight 2 or more bosses at the same time to rack up your highest score. There will be 3 hubs for Dastardly Duos that players can visit, one in Stormwind, one in Orgrimmar, and one in Dornogal. While Vinny Sweets is running the show, you'll need to speak with Ziggy Meru to queue up for the fight in the Dastardly Dome. A visit with Woden, the troll servant vendor, will also get you access over the weeks to some additional power-ups and items that can help you in the fight. So, man, let me finish this. In week 1, there will be 4 bosses available to fight, and each week thereafter, additional bosses will be added up to a total of 10 bosses to face. Earning specific achievements will provide additional game effects from them within Dastardly Duos, and earn points for kills, damage done, and much more. Rack up a high score with your party for bragging rights and see how far you can go. This sounds really cool. I'm down. This is like when Blizzard invited down the big raid teams to BlizzCon and basically put together like show matches where those raid teams would face 2 or 3 bosses at the same time from the past, and it was just ridiculous and silliness of what's happening, except obviously this is going to be a lot more designed and sort of curated element because it's going to be available to all players who want to hop in and do there. I'm curious as to the size of groups. I'm assuming it's 5 people, but I would love to see this as like a 3-person thing, honestly. I'm hoping this is like a smaller group thing. I don't know. It didn't state. Did you see anywhere where they said how many people?
I didn't see anything that specifies. No, I mean they kind of use the language party, right?
Yeah.
Which sort of implies 5 players. I'm hoping that you could do solo or small group. It'd be really cool to literally do it with a duo or do it solo. But I don't. It may be just a party based activity straight up. The idea of fighting 2 bosses at once is really cool and weird, and this I kind of get Brawlers Guild vibes from this. Like it's not exactly the same thing, but I think it might kind of fill in a little bit of that space that we've been missing with Brawlers Guild being, gone or not updated for a long time now. Just like a different way to use kind of like boss mechanics, boss type encounters, and do something different and fun with it. It seems cool. What I'm kind of getting the sense of, at least with this and with the Hallowfall Ashkahet scenarios, is like probably not a huge vector for character power, but just some fun variety during the week to, like, if you're into the collection aspect it's presenting you, to go get it and just try some different stuff out in the game. I think that's a cool thing to add in these like interstitial patches. And sort of also levels out the fact that Undermine may not be everybody's vibe. And it is kind of a weird left turn from kind of where we were at in season 1. And also there isn't a ton of stuff to do there unless you want to sit around and dig up trash piles, right? So, this patch will probably come in like 2 months, right? We were in this kind of 2-month cycle. So by that point, you'll probably be done with your Undermine renown. And if you want to hang out there, you can. If you want something else to do, then, this kind of stuff should be in there. I mean, it does sound like Dastardly Duos, it is time limited, right? It's not going to be this entire patch cycle, or it's not going to be forever. So, just something to keep an eye out as we get more details.
Yeah, it is. I want more details for sure. The other thing I want more details on is Horrific Visions Revisited. There was a collective groan that was let out by the people I know when they saw this, because this was not their favorite content that happened. But it's coming back. So, return to N'Zoth's corrupted versions of Stormwind and Orgrimmar. Complete objectives and take on challenges within. As you make your way through these encounters, you'll need to maintain your sanity or ultimately fail. You will be able to go it alone or create parties of allies to join you. Players who want to experience Horrific Visions alone or need an additional helping hand in their party will also be able to invite a construct of Soridormi companion to join them. This follower will be a tank, DPS, or healer and will not be affected by sanity. For players looking for an even bigger challenge, you'll be able to activate higher difficulties of play for additional gear up to heroic difficulty items appropriate for your level. Heroic Vision masks are also returning, including the Mask of Pain, Mask of Dark Imagination, Mask of the Long Night, and Mask of the Burning Bridge, and Mask of the Daredevil. 3 additional new masks will also be available to discover and conquer. A new currency to collect becomes available to spend at vendors for previous rewards. Displaced corrupted mementos is the currency. Players will be able to earn new rewards in horrific vision, such as mounts, toys, transmogs, weapons, enchants, and more. Whether you're playing at max level, alternate character, or experiencing it for the first time, you can experience this content shortly after the launch 11.15 update. I don't know, man. I mean, this was a chore. This was one of the largest WoW chores during BFA that folks had to go and do. There was an immense amount of pressure to do them properly, because if you failed, you only had so many runs you could do a week, and you would miss out on large character power, which sucked. There was just a lot of stuff about it that was not fun. I am hoping that this is not a similar situation for players, and this can be a fun thing for them to do. I struggle to see how this fits, so mentioning the construct of Sorodormi makes me think that there's going to be some timey-wimey things that make this relevant for the current storyline. I'm just curious as to how they are going to tie it in, or just not make it like a, Kalimdor race revisited thing that's like, oh, this is just like an occasional event that comes back every now and then. It seems odd to be putting this in. I don't think this was missed, but I guess it's coming back, and it is what it is. So we need to sign up for it to get all the rewards, because that's what we're going to want, is all the mounts and toys and transmogs and stuff like that they're throwing in. So we'll get players on board, I guess, that way.
I mean, I didn't hate Horrific Visions in their initial implementation, but I also did them way too much. So I have really no desire to do them again. I'm kind of okay without the collections. The thing that raises the eyebrow here is weapon enchantments, and we know that they've data mined that some of your favorite corruption effects, like Twilight Devastation and Infinite Stars, are coming back as enchants in this patch. So now, do you have to earn the enchant specifically by buying them with Displaced Corrupted Mementos, or does an enchanter learn them and then can ply their trade? That part I don't know right now.
Are the reagents things that are found inside of the Horrific Visions? Like, we don't know any of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't. I'm not totally sure on what has been data mined or not, but I did see the list of stuff that was coming back. Like, I want Twilight Dev. How many times have I talked about it over the years about bringing it back somehow? I don't know if it'll be good, but it'll be fun. And so we'll see how that goes. That might be just sort of the end of it for me. Like, okay, I can now apply Twilight Dev or Infinite Stars to a weapon or whatever I want to do. I mean, maybe they mean weapon enchants here just as like a visual thing, but the way that they say enchants and what we know about the data mining, it makes me think it's not like an illusion. It's legit power. It's an effect to put on your weapon. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, the thing about them in BFA was you had to do it on every character you wanted to play, because you had to keep your corruption resistance current.
Yep.
This will, I'm sure, not be like that. It'll be more just to do it to collect the currency and to buy what you want off the vendor. So that takes some of the pressure away, and also like wanting to really like, hopefully the rewards for maxing it out feel super optional. It's not like, oh, you get a ton more Displaced Corrupted Mementos if you do it that way.
Yeah.
As far as the theming, I mean, I would say we do have to fight like a Void Corrupted Illyria in the Stormwind version, who obviously she's very prominent in the story here. And like, I don't know, man, they are dropping all kinds of N'Zoth stuff everywhere in this expansion. I feel like N'Zoth is still lurking somewhere. Like, I don't know if you've been in Excavation Site 9, one of the new delves so far. It's like that looks like a space where N'Zoth fought the Titans and N'Zoth won. So I feel like we probably haven't, even though the ending of BFA was what it was. I have a feeling that they're planting some seeds that like either N'Zoth hasn't totally gone away himself,
Son of N'Zoth.
or like maybe the ethereals or some other kind of void empowered forces are like using some kind of residual N'Zoth energy to do something sinister, right? Like, even if it's not N'Zoth itself, there may be some other force connected to it. That's I feel like they're telegraphing that a lot between what's in the game now and like the spaces that they've created, and then bringing Horrific Visions back. I'm thinking it's all tied into like kind of where we end up like going into the end of War Within and into Midnight, but we'll see. Obviously, like I'm just spitballing here, but I do think that they're sort of taking us on this ride to kind of War Within in a lot of ways is a direct sequel to BFA, and so I was
going to say like BFA had the exact same track of like, isn't Azeroth the last boss? Isn't Azeroth not the last boss? Who knows? And then we're on the same path in War Within. So yeah, it's one of those things. There's definitely a direct tie in there. I'm with you on that. I understand how that could tie in that way. I don't want it to become a chore, man. I'm good, like you said, with them not having something like corruption resistance tied to it, which means you don't have to run it every week on all the characters you want it to be relevant on. And it's really important that you get it completed, or you hit certain benchmarks when you're completing it for character power. I do worry about bringing back some of those enchants because they were so powerful, how they are going to essentially make that work, as well as Twilight Dev just inside of dungeons in general, pulling random packs as the tornado wanders off into things. So you had to be really careful with that. So we'll see how all this goes.
Hey, at least Told to Gore won't be in the pool for season 2 anyway.
True, it won't be there for that.
That was some of the big offenders in there, but yeah.
But yeah, outside of that, we got a UI update where they're implementing an update which introduces Cooldown Manager, allowing players to better track their ability cooldowns. This additional functionality can now be personalized through edit mode in the UI, so I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. I love that they just keep adding things like this. This is what I want. I want many, many more things built into the UI that lets me actually track those sorts of things. So yeah, we'll see what that looks like. Okay. With that, let's take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Giving a shout out today to Alianas, Arajian, Bradley, Dustin, James, Kapawi, Cobra, Max, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much for all that you give to support the show. We appreciate you very much. And no new patrons this week, but if you want to hop on and support the show, you can join our Patreon by going to patreon.com/thestartingzone, and you can check out all the episodes that get posted there that are free to listen to. We just accept your donations on episodes, although there's going to be some shifts that happen with Patreon stuff. I don't think it should affect you guys that much, but it'll be a different kind of pay schedule because of them shifting up a pay per item that we post versus a pay per monthly sort of subscription. So there may have to be some adaptation that happens there. We'll be sure to announce it here so that you guys can be ready for like probably nothing really changing for you, but just, it might look different when you go to the site, and we might have to talk about it differently when we're talking about the pay schedule. So yeah. All right. With that, a big shout out and thank you to all of our patrons again, past and present. Thank you so much for supporting the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We couldn't do it without you week in and week out for sure. And we've been at this a long time. So some of you have been supporting us a super long time. And it's also nice to get new people checking in and contributing to the show after all this time. It's always cool. So thanks a lot. Yeah, definitely. Without you all, we could not keep the show on track. We would not be able to somehow squeeze a record in this week, for example, between all the other stuff that we have to do. So thank you so much, patrons, for keeping us on track.
Yeah, that's going to wrap up episode 674 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out the show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. Another great way to support the show is to leave us a 5-star review over on your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, and we'll read some of them live here on the show. So thank you so much for those who do that. If you want to get yourself some TSC gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. And if you want to get yourself some Discord conversations happening, you can find our Discord server at thestartingzone.com/Discord, or you can find us on Blue Sky at startingzone.bsky, or over on Twitter at thestartingzone, or you can email us thestartingzone@gmail.com. With that, Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
You can find me around Twitter and Blue Sky. It's Shieldwald on Twitter and jlucas.bsky.social. Over there, I mostly post stuff on Blue Sky, but I do check both places and check messages and stuff. So you can find me at either of those places and come say hi. You can also find me streaming on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Probably just Twitch stuff for a while because we still got drops going on, I think, for a little bit. So I streamed like 4 nights in a row last week. That was unusual. It's been a while since I did something like that. So I have been streaming some retro games, some Pokemon and stuff, but I'm definitely gonna be in WoW mode this week because we got to get keys done, we got to get raids going. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday for sure, 7:30 Eastern, and probably squeezing something else in, maybe like a Thursday night or something for keys. So come say hi and get your drops for your robot dog pet.
Yeah, definitely your blue version of the one that was up on the trading post last month. And yeah, if you're trying to find me, you can find me at Spencer HD on Blue Sky and on YouTube and on Twitch. And if you're trying to find me on Twitter, it's at Spencer_Downey. And with that, man, it's been a great show this week. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. For Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.